What's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today doing a Master Duel Cyberdark deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this for you guys because this deck is an extremely fun deck to play that summons out one of the most powerful fusion monsters ever created, Cyberdark in Dragon. So without further ado, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards. Like in your name description every single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your Patreon. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing a single copy of Cyberdark Horn, a single copy of Cyberdark Edge, and a single copy of Cyberdark Keel. These cards are really good as one each in the deck, so you can make your copy of Cyberdark in Dragon. You need different names to be able to summon out your copy of Cyberdarkness Dragon, so you can upgrade it to Cyberdark in Dragon. But all these cards share a similar ability that when this card is normal summon, you can equip one level 3 or lower Dragon type monster from your graveyard to this card, which is a really cool ability. And they all gain attack equal to the equipped monster's attack, which is a pretty cool effect. I love that about these cards, and it's a really good 3 of to be able to play in this build, but you only need a single one of each of these cards. We then play 3 copies of Cyberdark Claw. Cyberdark Claw is definitely a 3 of in the build because this card is an amazing searcher because you can discard this card to add a Cyberdark spell or trap from your deck to your hand, and during damage calculation, if a monster equipped with this card battles, you can send a monster from your extract to the graveyard, which we actually play some really good targets in the extract to be able to use with that ability. We then play 2 copies of Cyberdark Cannon. Cannon's a really good 2 of in the build, and I feel like 2 is really all you need in this deck, but this card is the ability you can discard this card to add a machine Cyberdark monster from your deck to your hand. And during damage calculation, if a monster equipped to this card battles, you can send a monster from your deck to the graveyard, which is a great effect. We then play 2 copies of Cyberdark Chimera. Chimera is one of the most powerful cards in the entire deck, because this card basically turns your copy of Power Bond into Overload Fusion, which is insane. Plus, it searches Power Bond. You can discard a spell or trap card, add Power Bond from your deck to your hand, and you can only use it Dragon and Machine Siren monsters as fusion material this turn. Also, once, when you fusion summon this turn, you can also banish monsters from your graveyard as material, making it super easy to use Power Bond to be able to fusion summon out some really awesome boss monsters. We then play 3 copies of Cyber Dragon Core. Cyber Dragon Core is the best normal summon in the entire deck, because this card has the ability that if this card is normal summon, you can add a Cyber Spell or Trap from your deck to your hand, which is an amazing ability for this card to have. Plus, this card's name becomes Cyber Dragon while it's face up on the field or in the graveyard. We then play a single copy of Cyber Dragon Hertz. Hertz is really good as a 1 of in the build because this card has the ability, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add one other Cyber Dragon from your deck or graveyard to your hand, which is a pretty cool ability for this card to have. We then play a single copy of Cyber Dragon Nashter. Nashter is a great 1 of in this build because this card has the ability that you can discard one other monster to special summon this card from your hand. And if this card is normal or special summon, you can target a machine monster with 2100 attack or defense in the graveyard and special summon it, which is a really awesome ability to get you 2 monsters on the field so you can link summon. We then play a single copy of the original Cyber Dragon. This card is great because it is searchable off your copy of Hertz, which is amazing. And this card is a really awesome ability. If your opponent controls a monster and you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. We then play 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom's a definite 3 on the deck just to stop your opponent from touching the deck. We then also play 3 copies of Max C. This card is still at 3 in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, and it's insane that this card is at 3 because every time your opponent special summons, you're going to get to draw a card, which is such a powerful effect for this card to have. This card is a definite 3 of in just about every single Master Duel deck. So, that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to start with a single copy of Overload Fusion. Overload Fusion's a really good 1 of the deck because this card is basically Miracle Fusion for the deck, which is amazing. Being able to use cards in the graveyard as material to fusion summon a Dark Machine Fusion monster. We then play 2 copies of Called by the Grave. Called by the Grave is a definite 2 in the build just to stop your opponent from hand trapping you while you're going in for all of your plays. We then play 2 copies of Power Bond. Power Bond is a crazy powerful fusion spell that doubles the attack of the monster that it summons, and it's crazy powerful with Chimera because you can actually use monsters in the graveyard when you use Chimera with this card, which is so cool to be able to do. We then play 3 copies of Cyber Emergency. Cyber Emergency is a definite 3 of in the deck. This card is basically Rhoda for the deck, which is so cool because you can add a light machine monster that cannot be normal summoned or set, or a Cyber Dragon monster from your deck to your hand, searching out your copies of your Cyber Dragon core, which is amazing. We then play 3 copies of Cybernetic Horizon. Cybernetic Horizon is crazy powerful. This card has a ability that this card is always treated as a Cyberdark card. Unless you send 2 dragon and or machine cyber monsters with different attributes to the graveyard, 1 each from your hand and deck, and then add 1 dragon or machine cyber monster from your deck to your hand. And if you do, send a machine cyber fusion monster from your X deck to the graveyard, which is usually going to be your copy of Cyber End Dragon, so then you can equip it to your copy of Cyber Darkness Dragon, so you can summon out Cyber Dark End Dragon. This card is definitely a 3 of in the build. It's just so easy to get to, but it's still a really powerful card that you want to see. We then play 3 copies of Cyberdark Realm. Cyberdark Realm is an extremely powerful 3 of in the build, because this card is a Rhoda for the deck that when this card is activated, you can add a Cyberdark monster from your deck to your hand with a different name from cards in your graveyard, which is a really cool effect. And during your main phase, you can immediately, as effect resolves, normal summon a Cyberdark monster, giving you that additional normal summon, which is super cool about this card. This card is the best search off your copy of Core, because you can then search off your copy of Chimera off this card and still normal summon it, which is super cool. Then you can search out your copy of Power Bond and go in for some fusion plays. We then play 3 copies of Clockwork Knight. Clockwork Knight is a really cool 3 of in this build because all face-up monsters on the field become machine type monsters, and machine monsters that you control gain 500 attack and defense. Also, machine monsters that your opponent control lose 500 attack and defense, which is a really cool ability for this card to have, to turn everything into machine so we can contact fuse our opponent's monsters away, which is so cool about this card. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're just going to be playing a single trap, and that's going to be 1 copy of Cyberdark Invasion. This card is a really good 1 of, and I really like this card in the deck because it has the ability once per turn, you can activate 1 of these effects. That you can target a Cyberdark effect monster that you control and equip 1 dragon or machine monster from either graveyard to it as an equip spell that gives it 1,000 attack, or send an equip card that you control equipped to a machine monster to the graveyard to destroy 1 card your opponent controls, which is a really cool ability for this card to have. I definitely would recommend playing at least 1 copy of this card in the build, and I almost played 2 in this deck. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, guys, we're going to start off with a single copy of our main boss monster, Cyberdark End Dragon. This card is one of the most powerful fusion monsters ever created, and usually when you summon this card out to your side of the field, you win the game. And it must either be fusion summon or special summon by tributing 1 level 10 or lower Cyberdark fusion monster equipped with Cyber End Dragon, which is super easy to do with Cybernetic Horizon. It also has the ability it's unaffected by your opponent's activated effects, and once per turn, you can equip 1 monster from either player's graveyard to this card, and this card can attack a number of times each battle phase up to the number of equip cards equipped to it, which is such a cool ability for this card to have because it gets really big and it can attack multiple times, and it's hard to deal with for your opponent. We then play a single copy of Cyber Darkness Dragon. This card is really easy to summon because it just requires 5 Cyberdark effect monsters, and there's a really cool combo in the deck that makes this really easy to be able to do. But this card is a walking negate, making this card a really good 1 of in the build, and usually what you're tributing equipped with Cyber End Dragon to be able to summon out your copy of Cyberdark End Dragon. We then play a single copy of Cyberdark Dragon. You don't summon this card all the time, but it does come up every so often, so it's a definite 1 of the build. Plus, it's an awesome classic boss monster, and this card is just so cool. It's actually one of my favorite fusion monsters ever created. We then play a single copy of Cyber End Dragon, which we actually still have that misprint, which looks insane. This card is so cool, and definitely give us a like for that one. The cool thing about these cards is when they released the Cyber Strike structure deck, this card was actually stamped with Cyberdark End Dragon, and Cyberdark End Dragon was stamped with Cyber End Dragon, making them look like this card. Because if you notice the rocks at the bottom making it really cool, and the blue dot over here being Cyber in Dragon's Head, which is so cool. I love that about this card, and it's just so cool. But this card is used to be able to summon out your copy of Cyberdark in Dragon. We then play a single copy of Chimera Tech over Dragon. This card is just a really good option to be able to make. They can attack multiple times and gets really big with Overload Fusion. We then play a single copy of Chimera Tech Mega Fleet. Mega Fleet's really good, especially since we play cards that are Cyber Dragon monsters like Core, so we can basically get rid of our opponent's entire field and OTK our opponent. But this card is really good because it gets rid of cards out of the extra monster zone, which is really nice. We then play 2 copies of Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon. This card lets us basically contact fuse our entire opponent's field away with Clockwork Knight, making this basically a board wipe to OTK, which is insane to be able to do and comes up all the time. We then play a single copy of Chimera Tech Rampage Dragon. This card is a card that I really like in the deck because you can summon it off of Power Bond, and this card can attack multiple times on pop spells and traps, which is super cool. We then play a single copy of Garua. Garua is a card that you send to the graveyard, and it's a really good card to be able to use in the deck because it has the ability when it touches the grave, you get to draw a card. We then also play a single copy of Elder Emptiness. When this card does touch the graveyard, you get to pop a card. We then play a single copy of Wind Pegasus. Wind Pegasus is a bounce when it's in the graveyard, which is really nice. These are all basically targets for your copy of Claw, which is super cool to be able to do. We then play a single copy of Cyber Dragon Seeker. Seeker's great in this deck and it's super easy to make. It does make your monsters even bigger, which is amazing. We then play a single copy of Anaconda. It's insane that this card is still at 1 in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, but this card is really good to be able to play in the deck because it does help you with your fusion plays, which is really nice, especially Overload Fusion. And then finally we play a single copy of Alamirage. Alamirage is just great to be able to play in the deck as a 1-up because it helps you get one of your monsters into the graveyard, which is super cool and gives you a little bit of protection. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed. This deck is super fun to be able to play and actually really easy to pick up in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel because there's a structure deck that you can actually pick up in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel to be able to build this deck, which is super cool. Just add a couple of hand traps to it and you've got the deck, which is amazing. So that's going to do for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Definitely hit that bell there so you can come part of Notification Squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.